wait. I think ma'am will join us as she joins in. So without much ado, uh, good afternoon to each one of y'all. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of y'all to this webinar on Public Affairs Index 2021, Governance in the States of India. Before I move on, I would like to start with an apology. Of course, it's lovely to see Ramanathan sir. However, our director, Mr. Gurucharan, is not well and hence will not be joining us today. As a wise man mentioned, the show must go on. So here I begin. This is the second instance where IIPA and PAC are conducting this webinar. Last year, we had an excellent webinar to discuss the Public Affairs Index 2019. My name is Dr. Annapurna Ravichandar. I am the head of the Policy Engagement and Communication at the Public Affairs Center. I also act as the Executive Director of the Public Affairs Foundation, which is a sister concern of Public Affairs Center. To begin with, as all of us know, but I thought it was my duty to introduce IIPA because we're recording this entire event and then disseminating it on our website and social media platform. The IIPA is an autonomous academic institution of national eminence for training, research, and information dissemination in streams related to the ethos of public administration. It is now known internationally as a premier center for training and research in public administration and management. It's very nice to hear that IIPA enhances the frontiers of knowledge in public policy and governance through applied research and education, as well as training of administrators to serve the people of India. It's very nice to hear what IIPA is doing because I think the Public Affairs Center is doing some of the activities that you're already doing. The Public Affairs Center started its journey way back in 1994 and was established by Dr. Samuel Paul. Ever since, PAC has coasted its way in enhancing research domains by working closely with the various governments, both at state and at the center level. Of course, in doing so, PAC realized and recognized the use of data in conducting action research and hence the birth of the Public Affairs Index, which is a result of identifying data from open sources, analyzing the same, and that's how we began launching the first Public Affairs Index 6 years ago. One may ask, what is the Public Affairs Index? The 6th edition, which is what we're going to discuss today, is a flagship project of the PAC. By 2021, ranks the states and union territories on the basis of their performance in the subnational governance for the overarching sustainable development pillars of equity, growth, and sustainability. There are 43 indicators that construct these three pillars, and they aim to capture all the important human development aspects. This year, the report has included 2 new components apart from the governance model, scheme analysis and the COVID-19 response index, because we thought this would be very appropriate and important. The scheme analysis in PI 2021 includes ranking of the states on 5 centrally sponsored schemes of Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, National Health Mission, Integrated Child Development Services, the Samagraha Siksha Abhiyan, and Midday Meal Scheme. The report also introduces rankings on the performance of the states in terms of its preparedness and containment of the COVID-19 pandemic, named as the COVID-19 Response Index. PI 2021 has also included a chapter on data analysis to analyze the rate of growth of all the states and their path towards achieving steady state. Yes, it also gives me great pleasure in inviting all the eminent personalities, speakers, organizers to this event. I now hand over the, shall I say, the computer floor to uh, Tripathi sir. But before I start requesting him, I would like to say the structure of this event is we've provided some questions to all of them, all the panelists, so that they can talk around this. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Sri Surendranath Tripathi, IAS retired. He took charge as the Director General IIPA in April 2019 while he was still holding the charge of Secretary, Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, Government of India. It is very nice to hear that besides holding several prestigious posts, he is credited with revolutionizing the Panchayati Raj and Rural Department of Orissa. As Secretary IT, he digitized all government orders and other information of Government of Odisha and put them into public domain on the website. He is also credited with wide-ranging reforms in the tool room concept while being in MSME as JS and then Development Commissioner MSME. After he took over as the DG of IIPA, he has been instrumental in implementing e-office, which has simplified the office working tremendously. In this crisis time, it is no surprise when face-to-face training was practically nil. He, along with his team, worked overnight for reorienting team IIPA towards digitizing and conducting online training. Over to you, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Let me at outset welcome each one of you to this digital meet. Before I request Sri S. Ramanathan sir, Chairman, Indian Institute of Public Administration, Karnataka Regional Branch, friend, philosopher and guide for IIPA Delhi, I would certainly once again take this opportunity of congratulating him on completion of his 94th birthday.
Thank you.
And like to congratulate him for his all the works he has done in public service. It is our honor and privilege to request a distinguished bureaucrat, a thought leader, and active in public service, even now, without any reduction in his zeal and an enthusiasm. So it is always pleasure to meet you and discuss with you.
Thank you.
Today we will have once again the privilege of your opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
No, I have requested Dr. Annapurna to speak on my behalf. I'm not able to speak at all because my throat has failed completely.
Sir, thank you, sir. It's okay.
That's why. Thank you.
Oh.
Please, you can continue.
It's my proud privilege to speak to this August gathering about what I think about public affairs index, especially the governance in the states of India, and what PFI and IIPA together can do as a thought leader in this area. Friends, we all know that governance means good governance. There is nothing like governance is bad and we call it governance. Governance in all spheres must be good, not only once, not only for a day, and not only for a sector, but all the time, all the sector, equally important. Second thing about governance is that government servant, whosoever they are, right from lineman to chairman, in terms of implementation, and right from policy making, right from district level government to state and center, they are supposed to be always continuously planning for public welfare. It is not, there is no halt, there is no chutti, there is no corona, there is no event that can make us deviate from these two North Stars. Very few people, very few organizations in the world have two North Stars. Most of us has one North Star, that we will do our job diligently. But in government, there are two things. One, the implementers must be observing ethical standard all the time, and government must be observing public purpose all the time. And these two and these twin shall meet in various public policy options. Whatever government of the day takes, because we have adopted democratic model, we have adopted constitutional democracy, we have had a long history of foreign rule and perhaps all the social fault lines. So we started with a mechanism where constitutional democracy became our hallmark, what we call it, the political architecture. But on this political architecture, we superimposed our economic architecture, which was essentially or initially based on mixed economy, where commanding height was given to the public sector undertaking, and government was supposed to manage all the affairs of citizen, what we call it, cradle to grave. Planned intervention based on Soviet model, statistics, and a very elaborate arrangement of government. And we became so large that ultimately the Prime Minister of a day has to say that the time has come for minimum government and maximum governance. I don't know whether it is a sign of reflection on bureaucracy or it was a sign of desperation with bureaucracy, but fact remains that such a thing had happened when we were told that minimum government means government should be there where it is essential and required. Can I take a break and kindly include Dr. Saldi? So we adopted this model where commanding height was given to public sector undertaking. One thing I would certainly like to highlight that when government and when Honorable Prime Minister said that we require minimum government and maximum governance, I'm again not putting any motive, but one can certainly say that exasperation with the government that we are not able to implement the schemes which we were used to or what the government expects us to do. He suggested the idea of reform, perform, transform so that we can achieve the stated objective of the government. And if we take up these 2 pointers of the government, minimum government, maximum governance, and reform, perform, transform, then what is that we were supposed to achieve? And what are those public policy objectives? I will not like to elaborate because there are eminent speakers who are going to cover various aspects. Dr. Salini Rajneesh, we can't impanel you because you have to rejoin. I think there is some problem. You have to quit and rejoin so that we can impanel you as a panelist. I'm sorry for this interruption. So in this policy analysis, there are a couple of pointers which again need to be highlighted. How we consider the growth parameters. Within growth also, the growth that the Hindu rate, Muslim rate, Christian rate and Indian rate and all those rates are available, what we call it annual growth of GDP. But it is the time has come to go for measure even GDP per capita instead of going to make it only what we call it aggregate benefit. People like Dr. A. Pujari and many others are there who will highlight on this aspect because GDP growth is not the right indicator of prosperity and happiness of the people. Because GDP does include many things which we modern management calls it GDP and government celebrate it, but it also includes buoyancy in stock market, it also includes FDI and many more such factors which may not percolate in the area which improves governance, which may not percolate in area where people will get more benefit, more bucks and improve the general quality of life of people. So the GDP per se versus hunger index or human development indices, they need to become mainstream of public policy. Second thing I would certainly like to highlight is that we have adopted democratic model. That means the choice of the people, will of the people is supreme. Choice of the people is being reflected in continuous 17 election. We are privileged that we have always had peaceful transfer of power. We had 28 states and 9 union territories where also wherever elections and elected representatives are there, there has been always, we had a talkative and maybe a very vibrant democracy where things take longer time, but fact remains that we have had a fully functional democracy. In fact, in the words of Prime Minister, we can certainly claim that we are the birthplace of democracy. Today, we are the largest democracy also. And in our democracy, we have incorporated, allowed the vulnerable section, SCs, STs, and women right from panchayat, state and central level. So as far as giving representation, or we call taxation without representation, now there is representation and therefore taxation. So voice of the people have been captured. But today the question globally on public policy issue is that democratic system also requires a particular economic well-being to succeed. As economic liberalism or economic system requires certain level of democratic maturity to fructify. Because today's debate is whether state-led capitalism or market-led capitalism, which is better, which is giving growth to the people, which is meeting the aspirations of people, which is setting the ball right, which is putting the pigeon, the pigeon in the cage, or allowing the pigeons to develop. Therefore, in this area, when the growth parameter need to be linked to the HDI and democratic institutions are will of the people linked to the fast pace of delivery, many initiatives have been taken by Government of India. Some of them are giving fruit. That earlier the centralized allocation has been done away with. There is no need for planning commission who will boss over state planning processes. Now states have been liberated to plan for their own funds. They no need to look up and look down. They are quite responsible. Same thing is true for government also. Now ministries are more delegated with more financial power, then they need to go all the time to the finance commission or planning commission or going back and forth. And Mr. Ramanathan will certainly agree with us that this sort of liberation which people might have dreamt of is now being handed over to the bureaucracy, both at central secretariat as well as state secretariat. But fact remains that we are not as effective as the government of the day wants us. The planning cycle of 5 years has gone into our DNA that we must think for 5 years, plan for 5 years, and deliver after the 11th year. The governments today are in a hurry. They no longer dominance of one party, one system, where people and the heads of the government can be chosen from Delhi or what we call it one-person government. Today, government has to show their report card, and in fact, today we call it that the now union government has to be validating itself almost on a quarterly basis. We all have seen how social media have made the life impact on public policy making. We all have seen how the three formulas who were equally progressive, but the government has to make a hasty retreat depending upon the voice of the people. That means voice of the people today is more articulated than the entire democratic structure has ever articulated it. Therefore, government of the day must respond to it. In case we go for 10-year life cycle of a plan or 5-year life cycle of a plan and implementation, we will be committing a bigger mistake, and I don't think government of the day will survive and allow bureaucracy to think like this. That means the pressure is on us, the implementers also, to walk in tandem. And there are examples which are pointers that how bureaucracy has changed itself. I can give you only one example. There are many more, because we made mistake when there was selection between poor and non-poor. I think Sir Dr. Ramanathan will certainly certify that we could never identify the poor rightly. Always poor schemes relating to poor were fairly porous. Non-poor were getting more benefit than the poor, certainly. And all the exclusion and inclusion criteria were working against the poor. Today we are taking a near universal scheme. घर सबको, बिजली कनेक्शन सबको, उज्ज्वला सबको, टॉयलेट सबको. जब तक सबको सब कुछ नहीं मिलेगा, तब तक सबका साथ, सबका विकास and सबका विश्वास नहीं मिलेगा. And all these things, which is the policy planning at the government of India level, now government want that if I think today, you should start implementing in the next 45 days, which was unthinkable, sir, in government of India. I know I was also a state secretary in MG Narega, took 1.5 years of discussion, then act was passed, rules were made, states were trained, a date of inauguration was put, and then it was first 100 district, then another 200 district, and then ultimately all the districts were covered. That means 100 days of job require not only 1000 days of planning, but 1000 days of execution leverage. Today, sir, during Corona time, I will give one example before I close. Sonidhi scheme, रेडी पट्टी वालों के लिए a small loan. When the country was passing through Corona, on 25th of May, Honorable Prime Minister decided that we should have some scheme for ready patti walas who are being removed from ready pattis, who become the victims of rent seekers, be it police, be it municipal employees, be it other state non-stakeholders, even shopkeepers. And you will be happy to know, sir, on 25th of May, the scheme was announced. On 25th of July, 1 million applications from 100 cities were collected. And by 15th of August, 1 million applications were disposed of by the bank, with every radiowala getting a loan of rupees 10,000. Entire scheme being explained to the bureaucracy. There was no training, there was no halla gulla, everybody understood because there was no selection. Anyone on the ready patti, I'd register him, use Aadhaar to register to a bank, call him, give him 10,000 rupees credit. In the meantime, he submits his plan and he walks away with 10,000 rupees. That means decision at the speed of thought, implementation at the speed of light, and satisfaction of a fairly unprivileged category who were victims. Now they are honored entrepreneurs. Maybe they are macro and nano entrepreneurs, but they do provide job because they meet their own requirement. They also provide at times job to one more person. Purpose of saying is not about success or failure of a scheme. Purpose of saying is that a public policy which does not respond to the democratic choice, which does not respond to the economic architecture, which takes longer planning time, I mean not thinking time, but planning and implementation time, those days are over. This is age of social media where the information travels across the globe at the speed of light. And bureaucracy, planners, implementers, and all those stakeholders must be ready for this type of tectonic shift in relation between citizen and government. Samaj, Sarkar and Bajar, all three want quick decision, quick policy decision, and then FDI will come, then foreign factories will come. Only then India can perhaps strengthen its manufacturing base also. Today we are not only talking about ease of doing business, we are talking about ease of living. We don't want government to be present from cradle to grave. We want government to be off from the citizen's life. And its biggest example is 42 unicorns born in India during COVID times. What these entrepreneurs have done, they are born in Hyderabad, they are born in Bangalore, they are born in India. They are first time dreamers, but they have good idea. But what are the three distinguishing things that this world has given it to us? One of them is, I must say, that this is the age of meritocracy. In IPL today, Rishabh Pant can become captain. He doesn't need to be belonging to Bombay club or Delhi club or this club or that club. If you are good, you can be even the captain in IPL. All the Ranji trophies could not create IPLs, but IPLs have created. Each team is worth $1 billion valuation. That means this much of money has come to sports one area because it was open to market and our Indians did better. Second thing, I will give another example. Let's take up entertainment. During OTT, during this COVID times, all the theaters were closed. There is huge job that is created in OTT sector. Who thought that? We will have 40 platform born in India who will subscribe to the OTT platform. G5, this 5, that 5, all those things. We no longer dependent upon Netflix or Amazon only for our entertainment. And who knew that Huma Qureshi is going to be the leader in OTT platform? Nawazuddin Siddiqui is ruling the roast. Manoj Vajpayee, who might not be that visible on the screen. Limited point is that Indians do respond. I do take case of, before I take my rest, to this digital platform. We thought that banking is the only way to give credit. Today, banks are melting. There is no need for new bank branches. If anyone does analysis of JAM, Janadhan, Aadhaar and mobile, he will find out that 45 crore accounts of unbanked people were opened in last 5 years without a single new bank branch opened anywhere. In fact, many banks were closed. Many banks have been merged. Now we have less banks, more account, more banking, more access to the bank. In fact, banking sector because of fintech is going for a metamorphosis. Today, these unicorns have not become multi-billionaire or billionaire by taking credit from bank. In fact, all these 42, none of them have taken single rupee from bank. They all have got money from public equity, private equity, and all those funds, which are evidently available in the market. So you don't need to rob a bank to become a Robin Hood and to provide job to the people of India. So OTT platform, who thought that a poor will transact through UPI, through Google Pay, through Paytm? Today we need to do banking anywhere. People thought that they need a training. Nobody needs a training. WhatsApp does not require any training. Only in case government servant want to use WhatsApp, they will require training. ये ऑफिस के लिए ट्रेनिंग चाहिए. How to fill a form correctly, ट्रेनिंग चाहिए. How to apply for passport, ट्रेनिंग चाहिए. When we need training for doing mundane work, why don't we require training for doing UPI, watching OTT, watching IPL, doing digital transaction, sending our children abroad for study? We don't require any training. Only when it comes to poverty alleviation, helping the poor, making ease of doing business, promote ease of living, government servant require training. Even training is become major lift up under what we call it mission Karmayogi. Karmachari need to become Karmayogi, and Karmacharis were easily becoming Durachari and Dustachari instead of becoming Sadachari. Now government wants to become Karmayogi so that they will operate in their own roles without waiting for any instruction. So things are changing, friends. Public policy front, both policy planning, policy implementation, and feedback mechanism, or this loop of public policy where Sarkar, Bajar, and Sarkar, this triangle must meet in the social media market, and they must validate almost on hour-to-hour basis to survive. This is the age we have come, but not by choice. Are we ready? If yes, democracy and our own brand of Indian characteristic capitalism will flourish. If we fault on any line, in any corner, even at the level of citizen or bureaucracy, we will pay a heavier price. With these initial remarks, once again thanking for the blessing of Sri S. Ramanathan sir and the PFI for arranging such a high-ranging workshop. I set my case to rest. May I request Anjana ji to make a presentation on PI 2020.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Before we start, Dr. Sapna, you may have to unmute both Dr. Shalini and I think Jairaj sir is rejoined again. So if you don't mind.
Okay, ma'am. Shalini ma'am will be able to unmute herself. I have made her panelist. I'll make
Okay, Jairaj sir just messaged me. I think he rejoined. So if you don't mind, thank you.
Jairaj will also be able to unmute. I have made him panelist.
Okay. So, sir, thank you so much for such an excellent speech. I only read about you, but today I have the pleasure of listening to what you said. And I think you brought out two very key points. One is training, training, training. Actually, I made it as 3 because it's become so important. And I think the other thing is the feedback mechanism, which has become an important aspect in the policy making process, because without giving valid, valuable feedback and having a mechanism in place, no policy is going to improve or change. We'll end up as citizens saying the government is not good, this was not good, that was not good. So as a citizen, what are we doing to do that? And I think you very beautifully set the context for today's talk on the Public Affairs Index. I now invite Anjana Kirpadatil. She's the program officer at the Public Affairs Center. Anjana was a team member last year for this particular project, and now she leads the team for Public Affairs Index 2020 with a young group of, she herself is young, of course, of other researchers and analysts. So, Anjana, on to you for your presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Annapurna, for introducing me so perfectly. So I'm here to give a brief about the Public Affairs Index. Like Dr. Annapurna mentioned, I was part of the team of PI 2021. I handled the section on scheme analysis, which was a new addition to Public Affairs Index this year. And I was also part of co-authoring certain other sections of the report. So I'll just walk everybody through the methodology, models, and findings from the Public Affairs Index of 2021. So the PI model is essentially a four-tiered model. It has 43 indicators at the base of it, which is mapped to 14 different sustainable development goals as defined by the United Nations, which is further mapped to 5 different themes. Now, these themes are derived from the themes developed by the World Governance Index. Apart from one theme, we've kept aside the theme looking at terrorism, as we felt that that isn't relevant at a subnational level. So the other themes that we've looked at is voice and accountability, government effectiveness, rule of law, regulatory quality, and control of corruption. Now, these 5 themes further map to 3 different pillars. So we've chosen the pillar of equity, growth, and sustainability to rank the states on the basis of their good or bad governance. But like Sir said, there is no bad governance. Essentially, everything is supposed to be good governance. So we've tried to look at the 3 different pillars of equity, growth, and sustainability. Now, these 3 pillars then finally map onto one final composite score, which is used to rank rank all the states in India. Moving on, so the methodology followed in PI, very simply, putting it very simply, is identification of indicators and sources, collecting data and cleaning it. We run a methodology called Pairwise Correlation, which tries to explain whether there is any interlinkages between the data points within the data set itself. If there is interlinkages this way, if there is a correlation, we remove one of those indicators to prevent skewness of the final rankings. The next step, of course, is standardization of data. So we use the process of normalization using z-scores, which is computed looking at the mean and the standard deviation of the data set for all the states within a particular indicator. The next step, obviously, is to put these z-scores into the model and run a principal component analysis, which is a dimensionality reduction method to arrive at scores. And the final step, of course, is using these scores to and rank it from best to worst based on the scores itself. And these scores range from a -1 to a +1. So one important thing that we have to mention here is the division of how we've divided the states. So all the states itself are categorized into large states and small states, and these are divided based on the population mentioned in the census. The third section are union territories. So we have rankings for large states separately, small states separately, and then for the union territories. The composite index using principal component analysis is developed at multiple stages. The first stage is at the sustainable development goals, the next stage at the theme level, and the third at the pillar level. And finally, the scores derived at the pillar level is aggregated or averaged to arrive at the final score used to rank the states. One important factor that we have to take a look at while looking at PI is the data. So to avoid data bias, we've sourced all data points from central government sources so that at some point in time, there aren't local governments and state governments saying that we did not enter data, or it is just data unavailability that led to our poor ranking. All the sources are from government, central government sources. And if there is any data point where more than 5 values are missing, we usually don't take that data point. For one example would be of NFHS 5. So when we were collecting data for PI 2021, NFHS data wasn't released for all the states. More than 5 states did not have the data points. We did try some proxy data and predictions, but due to lack of accuracy and all of those, we kept the indicators itself out of it. So we've used NFHS 4 wherever there were indicators we couldn't avoid. And in other cases, we've tried to look at proxy indicators. What is new in Pi is, like Shakespeare says, brevity is the wit of the soul. So we've tried to reduce further the number of indicators from 50 in the previous year to 43 this year. We've tried to add one additional sustainable development goal, which is responsible production and consumption. We have a chapter on the analysis of 5 centrally sponsored schemes, which I will be talking about later, and an additional chapter on COVID-19 response index of the state governments. We also have a delta analysis to understand how the change of the state has been over the past 5 or past 10 years instead of only looking at absolute numbers. We've also tried to develop a pillar level cluster analysis. The cluster level analysis is another machine learning algorithm which does not have any input from us. The machine itself developed clusters depending on the similarity of the scores of all these data points of the states. So this is an overview of the rankings of all the states in the large states category. Kerala has come first, Tamil Nadu second, and Telangana third. While looking at this, if I could take the example of Karnataka and Gujarat, something that has to be observed is that Karnataka, while the scores being pretty well in growth and sustainability, the equity rank is what has brought down Karnataka's score tremendously. So we will get into the details slightly later. And in the case of Gujarat, who has come 5th overall, has scored first in equity. And in our index, equity and sustainability rankings are very important for the final scores. And as you can see, Gujarat has dropped in the sustainability rank, which has brought down its rank to the 5th. Otherwise, it is possible that the state would have fared better. Compared to the state of Kerala, who has come first, they've consistently maintained good performance while scoring second in equity and growth and first in sustainability. And Uttar Pradesh continues to remain a poor performer across pillars and in the overall index, being the worst performer among the large states. Moving on to the small states, Sikkim has come first. The level of consistency that the top ranker in large states, that is Kerala, has maintained is not seen among the small states, but relative performance again has been good for Sikkim, which has put it at the first place. And Manipur has ranked last. Among union territories, Puducherry has come first and Andaman and Nicobar Islands has fared poorest. A surprise was Jammu and Kashmir compared to previous year. Jammu and Kashmir has come second, whereas it was close to the last position in the previous year. Just an overview of the equity indicators. The equity indicators largely covers crime-related indicators, female representation in employment, politics, as well as education. It has also looked at deprivation and poverty-related indicators. And along with it, it's also looked at outcome indicators like infant mortality rate and malnutrition, etc. So some of the key findings that I could speak about in the equity principle was that the states which were worst hit during the first wave of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, has shown higher health infrastructure investments in this particular year. So that means that states have realized that it is important. But one important factor was that this means trade-offs if you look at it from an economic perspective. If the state has to allocate more budgets towards health infrastructure, it means that it has to reduce the budget elsewhere. And this was also seen simultaneously among these states. Karnataka, again, has shown further decline from previous year in the equity pillar. Last year, it was in the 12th position, and this year it came down to the 16th. Gujarat, however, ranked first. So that is an overview of the equity principle chapter of Public Affairs Index. Moving on to the growth indicators. These are the indicators that we've used. And it also covers indicators on the availability of resources. So if you look at it from the capability approach proposed by Amartya Sen, what he says is that you have to empower people enough so that they have capacities to develop capacities to go ahead and do what they want to do. So we've looked at sanitation, health, education, electricity, employment, and all of those resources that are made available to the citizens by the government itself. Another important factor that we've looked at under the growth pillar is states' public finances. So we've looked at budgetary allocations for the different sectors. We've looked at the net domestic product per capita. We've also looked at the state's own tax revenue growth. Looking at a few key points from growth, we see that structural transformation is a driver of good performance under growth. So the author of the section defines structural transformation as something where the state realizes that there has to be more focus and more employment in skilled agriculture or skilled jobs in other sectors other than agriculture, say manufacturing and services, which would outline the trajectories of development itself. The states have also managed to maintain their fiscal balances despite the pandemic and its negative impacts. Jharkhand has performed exceptionally well in developing the state's own tax revenue growth, which is seen as a good move. And one important recommendation for the state would be to address the growth of the size of the informal sector in the state. And this area would require a lot of state intervention as it is unaccounted for, and the demographic outlay of the system itself doesn't favor migration a lot. I'm sure the other panelists would be delving deeper into these points. And the last pillar is of sustainability. We've looked mostly at environmentally related indicators and preservation of the geography itself. And amongst these,
public affairs scholar.
And in this pillar, we see that ease of living indicators demand serious attention from the state governments in times of steadily declining environmental quality. Moving on to the delta analysis. So here what we've tried to look at is not just the absolute numbers, but also how the state has performed vis-a-vis its own performance 5 years back or 10 years back. So we've seen that Chhattisgarh has stopped here, which is a good move. It shows that they've realized that there are areas of improvement for themselves and improved their performance year on year. And among the small states, Nagaland has performed the best. Moving on to the scheme analysis section of PI, we've analyzed 5 centrally sponsored schemes, and we've loosely based it on a basic needs approach. We've tried to look at health, nutrition, education, employment, and shelter. But we had to keep Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which deals with shelter outside, because it is a fairly newly launched scheme and we had issues finding data for the same. We've assessed all these schemes on the basis of 4 different themes, which is access, coverage, availability, and utilization. Access, it basically tries to capture how easy it is for people in need to access the benefits of the scheme. And coverage looks at, out of the proportion that deserves or requires support from the government, what proportion of it has actually been covered by the scheme. Availability looks at the availability of resources. For example, if 30 people have availed the scheme, how many resources have the state been able to procure to reach out to these 30 people who are availing the benefits under the scheme. And the 4th section obviously is utilization. We've looked at it, most of it has been monetarily, and whether the state has been able to utilize the funds allocated for it under the particular project. We've bifurcated the states based on the states and central fund sharing pattern. So we have 2 categories. One is the 90 and 10 ratio, wherein 90% of the share is put in by the center and 10% of the share is put in by the state. The second section is the 60 and 40 division, where 60% of the fund for the scheme is put in by the center and 40 is put in by the state government. So here is an overview of the top and bottom performers of all the schemes. So as we can see, Kerala has come among the top performers in the National Health Mission, in the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, as well as Mandega, all of which is prominent sectors like health, education, and employment. One of the findings, as I mentioned earlier, is that the state has to concentrate on these key performing indicators to improve its overall performance, and that's reflective in the scheme analysis as well. One of the main issues that we faced while sourcing data for this analysis was the data unavailability. So what if I could take the example of ICDS, despite being a very, very old scheme, the central government sources, the latest updated central government source data is 2015. So only for every other scheme, we've used 5 years data, but for ICDS, we had to resort using whichever the latest data point is because of the unavailability of the same. Another observation is that investment in health, employment, and education are drivers of good performance, reflecting their performance of these states in the governance model. Another thing that we saw in the case of Manipur was that even though they were poor performing in terms of National Health Mission, every year their expenditure on health kept improving, even before the pandemic. So that is a very good move. And poor performing states should look at how their performance has fared over the 5 years to see if they've recognized the gap and try to address it further. And under the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, one of the prominent observations that we had was that the pupil-teacher ratio is secondary, and the first importance should be given to the trainings of the teachers itself. Whether the teachers in government schools are capable of teaching or qualified enough to teach the grades that they are teaching it. So this is a very short overview of the observations from the scheme analysis. And finally, we have the COVID-19 response index. So one prominent observation is that, like always, the southern states have been prominently better performing than the others. So 4 out of the 5 top 5 are southern states. And we've also seen that we've analyzed it based on preparedness and containment. So whether the state was prepared enough to address a pandemic and whether they were able to contain the pandemic when it happened. So some states like Delhi has been a top performer in preparedness itself, but they were not very good at containing it. So the balance of it is what we've used to analyze the performance of the states. One other very interesting factor that has been quite observed is the cyclical nature of poor health infrastructure. So when the state has poor health infrastructure, there would be low detection of COVID-19 cases, leading to low caseloads, leading to low death records particularly pertaining to COVID-19. So it would reflect well on the state's performance when you look at it from the outside, but in fact, that is not happening. This is an overview of the ranks of the COVID-19 response index itself. Kerala has topped here as well, Tamil Nadu being the second runner, very similar to the governance model. Maharashtra is being seen as the poorest performer, closely followed by Bihar. The last section, I'd like to take a run through the cluster analysis and the findings from it thereof. So the machine-defined clusters is developed based on the similarity of the performance of the states. So similar performing states by the machine itself would be put into similar clusters. So the first cluster typically contains states that were good in terms of structural transformation, health, as well as education. And despite the aspirational districts initiative, states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Assam, West Bengal, etc., grouped together as a poor performer, the lowest cluster. So these are this is the overview of Public Affairs Index 2021.
Thank you so much, Anjana. Do you all have any questions? Otherwise, we can proceed with the format. Anyone, any questions?
I have one question. Can I?
Yes. Yes, sir.
This PAI index, have they looked into GGI also, Good Governance Index prepared by Department of Administrative Reform and Public Grievances, where there are 9 indicators and 9 sectors and 52 indicators. Have they also looked into the aspirational district ranking done by the Niti Aayog and drawn any lesson out of it? Or you have done your own ranking and you have used the same in a different manner? That is one. And 2, the databases that you have referred to, and I am really happy that you have only taken the published data, you haven't taken any any so-called
Yes.
report, written or cooked data. So published data is a very good basis for doing it. Would you like to have a relook at these government indicators, GGI as well as this aspirational, and suggest a biomedial, maybe suggest a more comprehensive index where IIP and PI can work together, and perhaps we can develop better indicators on. So first about the looking at this to the data point, and third and final thing, this is my last time I will be putting question. In IIPA, we have been given a task to develop good governance index at district level. I would like if PSC is willing to work on that area, because for UP we have been given this task, we are working on it. And if you have any input or you have any suggestion, we can certainly share it. If today possible, otherwise at any point of time we can fix a one-on-one discussion with PSC and on this issue. So that's all from
Sir,
my side.
yeah, it's a wonderful gesture and suggestion. But like you said, sir, Anjana, if I may, yeah, sir, definitely this requires another discussion with you. We'll be very happy to do it, sir. We'll be very happy. We probably will set up another call with you and through Dr. Sapna or Dr. Jeevan, and definitely we'll discuss. Thank you so much, sir.
I
Thank
think
you,
I'll
sir.
add to the
Yes,
same
sir. Yes,
point.
ma'am.
You
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
the good governance index outcomes are entirely diagonal to PAC index. For example, Maharashtra, which you are showing as poor performer, is ranked number 2. Karnataka is more or less the same, it's ranked number 6. But surprisingly, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra are 7th, 9th, and 10th. So I don't know how relevant would PAC be when Government of India, is doing the ranking, and they also claim that they are going by the world ranking, indicators. So there's a dire need to reconcile these things before we work on it. And it's a very good suggestion from IIPA to develop a district administrative good governance indicator. I think we should take it forward.
Yes, ma'am.
And I can put my chief planning officers and other coordinators with IIPA branch.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Shalini, we would love to work with like-minded people. In fact, in any case, Karnataka government has always been a good partner for us. We would love to work in this area. Go ahead. Thank you.
Anjana, would you like to answer the earlier question that sir asked before I intervened?
In terms of comparison with the other indices, PI follows a 3-year structure. So every 3 years, we do sit and evaluate and compare all the other indices that are there in terms of governance across the world as well as within India itself. So this is the start. The next year PI is the start of the next 3-year cycle. So we are deep in the middle of analyzing it with all the other indicators that are being released. But one thing I'd like to add is that we rely only on central government sources. We try to avoid data bias. We try to follow the derived from all the world governance index. But one thing that we should proudly stand with is that PI is absolutely self-funded and is non-partisan. So we do not have anybody to please when we are bringing out the rankings. So that is something I think puts PI a step ahead of the other indicators.
In fact, we developed an FAQ last year and put it up on our website when a lot of people started reading PI and asking various questions. One of them was this: yes, we use open data sources. We are not trying to be, we are unbiased. And since we are also a non-partisan organization. So that's it. Anyone, any question? Otherwise, I will introduce Dr. Shalini ma'am, who's the first panelist on this for the session. Okay. I know I'm again doing a duty that I'm bound to do as the moderator, but for everyone who doesn't know Dr. Shalini Rajneesh, personally a very approachable and a nice person. Professionally, she is an IAS Additional Chief Secretary at the Planning Department, Government of Karnataka. She was a gold medalist in her academic background. She is known for her innovative steps to bring pro-people government policies to the people. Her stint in the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Administrative Reforms in Karnataka has definitely been quite successful. Currently, as Additional Chief Secretary to Government Planning, Program Monitoring and Statistics Department, she's closely working with organizations like the Public Affairs Center to ensure that the government of Karnataka achieves the SDG goals 2030. On to you, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Annapurna. Uh, I was told that there are some questions. Is it question answer or shall I just talk about it? Okay. Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity. We are having a very good relationship with PAC, a long-standing one, and not only for this governance index, but we have a unique program wherein PAC, Department of Planning and Statistics, and IIIT, Bangalore, we have come up with a Center for Open Data Research. And that's one of its kind where we are taking a huge bulk of data that the government generates from all departments. And we then try to analyze it into a micro level so that the planning is more focused. So I'm very happy to say that our new Chief Minister has been very appreciative of this input given by the planning department, particularly in the context of the SDGs. When I see the index in which we are poorly rated on the equity part, that is more of inequity, and obviously Bangalore stands apart from the rest of Karnataka, and within Karnataka, Kalyan Karnataka, the erstwhile Hyderabad Karnataka region is again one of its kind, which is pulling down the overall indicators. But that said apart, when we're talking of good governance, it has more to do with the governance, the machinery, and in the machinery, it is the people which may play the most important part. Now, there is no dearth of schemes programs, we all know. But why is it not reaching the person at the last mile is the question, the big question that we have at hand. I'm again very happy to say that our second Administrative Reforms Commission, working under Mr. Vijay Bhaskar sir, ex-Chief Secretary of Karnataka, has come out with very, very concrete recommendations to make the programs of the government, particularly for inclusive growth, more transparent and more approachable. So in that context, the inputs from PSC also have been very useful, because we know that people are not getting social security benefits, or they are not getting health cards, or they're not getting simple things like caste certificate, and therefore they don't get a scholarship, and so on and so forth. So inclusivity for us and the present Chief Minister is like the topmost in the agenda, and he has already ordered us to come out with the new Human Development Index report, the last of which was made in 2016. So last 5 years we didn't have one. And this HDI using CODR analytics and SDG 1 and 2 has very clearly shown that out of the the entire gamut of 30 districts and 220 talukas, we need to focus on very few talukas, and within talukas, very few gram panchayats, where we need to ensure that the inclusivity is provided through a proactive administration, as well as required additional budgetary support and then monitoring. So this is how we have taken the application side of the Good Governance Index, which was shared by PSC almost 3 months back with us. Secondly, we are looking at the convergence of schemes. See, if you look at micro level data, you will realize that the same family would not have got social security pension, Aadhaar card, ration card, or some benefits which the central government, let's say insurance scheme, assurance scheme, health insurance, etc., etc. So Karnataka government e-governance department has come out with an application called Kutumba, which is the citizen database. So now we have a citizen database of almost 6.5 crore people combined into households. So every input from any department that goes to that family gets recorded into Kutumba software or database. And as a result, we can now see what is the deprivation of that family. So it is easy to give the public domain available data into overall figures. So 30% are not having this. Okay, but who are these 30% is a billion-dollar question. So now we are able to identify not only district, taluka, gram panchayat, but household, and within the household which member does not have these entitlements, so to say, which they should and ought have, and that is a big indicator of our good governance. So based on this data, we are now making a back-ended target or approach, saying that look, you have to do that for all kind of thing. So Aadhaar for all, scholarship for all, ration card for all. So which taluka, which gram panchayat will have how many people to cover is now available in black and white, and they have to update it again in Kutumba software. So nothing can go unrecorded. So if they have been given, that will be minus. So we need not wait for these ongoing surveys now and then. We have something which is a dynamic kind of a database, and we can really do a lot on the human development part of it. Once we take care of these very few families, I think it's coming to about 15 to 20 lakh families in all respects. I'm sure Karnataka is not going to be away from the rank number one. The second very important thing I feel is that CM sir has talked about the reorganization of the staff. So in the planning department, I made an analytics of how much we are spending on productive expenditure, that means actual programs, and how much is on administrative. You'll be surprised that more than 50% or more than 45% is going into only salary and establishment. So on one side, you will find there is overstaffing, and another side you find there is understaffing, and as a result, outcomes are getting affected. So we're looking at some reorganizational efforts to see that those departments which have more services to render should have a better administrative support system, and then of course the capacity building as well, so that they're able to deliver the goods. And finally, I would say that the major thing that is missing in our administrative structure is awareness. Now, most of these families who are not included under the entitlements, you will know that when you ask them, do you know that you are entitled to get health insurance worth 5 lakhs under Ayushman Bharat? They don't know. And even if they know that, they don't know how to get it. So we are looking at some of the important ways and means to empower the citizen with awareness, and then also do a kind of a facilitating thing, say, at doorsteps. So you have like Jana Sevak scheme in Bangalore we have. So at your doorstep. So anything and everything that you don't have gets recorded. So one very interesting, I must share the innovative project we have started on this 15th of August 2021 as an Amrut scheme is Amrut Samudaya Abhivriddhi scheme with the help of NSS volunteers. So I have got about 5 lakh NSS volunteers under the sports department. And what we've done is we have selected 750 multi-dimensionally poor villages. Majority of them are in Kalyan, Karnataka region. And 450 educational institutions having NSS volunteers have adopted these villages almost at the rate of one institution for 2 villages. And now we are looking at a complete saturation of all the inclusive growth oriented programs using the volunteer strength. So these volunteers have been trained into government schemes, and they will work very closely with the Gram Panchayat task force, and they will have interaction with different interest groups, be it youth groups, be it women groups, be it farmer groups, and so on and so forth, depending upon categorization of schemes. We've got about 1,000 plus schemes. So we're also looking at how they can be converged. Also, we have developed one app. It's a mobile app which we are giving to our volunteers, wherein as and when they visit any of the household in that village, they can update the problem faced by that household through that app, which gets connected to integrated public grievance redressal system. That means if I visit house A and some lady Ratnamma says that I have not got my pension for last 3 months. So all this volunteer will do is update it on the app, and this will reach the concerned lowest functionary. That is, if it is a village accountant or it is a revenue inspector who is supposed to have sanctioned the social security benefit to that woman. It will get into his login, it will get into the revenue department login. Everybody from CM downwards can watch it, and the time is clocked as to how much time they take to redress the public grievances. There is a single helpline also created for this integrated public grievance redressal system, and then it gets connected to Kutumba software, so everything is connected. I think with that kind of a transparency, that kind of a micro level analytical approach and redressive approach, we can very easily bridge this gap between good governance and less good governance. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and we hope to work closely with you to be number one. That's the objective. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Anyone has got any questions for ma'am? We do have a Q&A session later, but should anyone have a question? Okay. Ma'am, I have a question, but I'll wait for it later because I think I should give fair chance to others.
I think if you can ask, because Annapurna, I'll have to leave now for another meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a quick, short question. So Karnataka has been quite swift in recognizing the importance of public policy, research and policy analysis. What are some of its real-time implications that you may have experienced?
As I said, we feel that the policy has to be based on hardcore data and again micro level analysis. Now, nutrition policy, it has to come out with the existing situation that prevails. Now, there is a different need of nutrition in North Karnataka compared to, let's say, tribal people in Chamarajanagar and so on and so forth. So we do make use of our Karnataka Evaluation Authority for coming out with evidence-based policy analysis and research. Then we share it with the departments concerned, and we tell them about the changes that are desirable to be made. And I'm very happy to say that over the years, very positive response has come in from the department because we want them to take the ownership. For example, forest cover, they say it is increasing because every year you're spending so much, you're adding so much trees. So data shows a lot of increase, but when you look at maybe remote sensing data, the tree cover has not increased, right? So there's a lot of cross checks and balances. We try to act as a balancing force. We also try to act as a nudging force. And I am very happy to say that all my colleagues are very positive, and under the leadership of our Chief Secretary, everybody responds, and many changes are being made based on this evidence-based research.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time also. Yeah. I now have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Supriya Roy Chowdhury, who was a former professor, Center for Political Institutions, Governance and Development, ISEC, Bengaluru. Her 20 years of association with ISEC can be traced back to 1995. She initially was designated as assistant professor in ISEC and then became an associate professor and a professor of the Center for Political Institutions, Governance and Development. Currently, she's a visiting professor, Urban and Mobility Studies Program, National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bengaluru. Apart from this introduction, I also would like to say my personal experience with ma'am has been great. Always welcome, always the soft character that she is, and always there's yes in her and never a no from her. So ma'am, over to you, ma'am.
She has to unmute.
Am I audible now?
Audible,
Audible.
but we can't
Okay.
see you. So, at least
Yeah,
I
I
can't.
just said that I had to turn off my video because
Okay, ma'am.
the connection is very weak today. So let me just go straight to some of the questions that you asked, some of which I found very interesting actually. The first was the relationship between theory and reality, which is actually a very old and continuing one. And I would say that in the social sciences, good theory or useful theory is always anchored in reality. Unless we're talking about normative theory, which sets down certain ethical prescriptions for social and political life. But that apart, one could take, for example, the Amartya Sen's concept of development as freedom, as the freedom to achieve one's own aspirations, having access to opportunities for education and health, which will equip individuals. Now, one could say that this is just theorizing or just a concept, but it is really based on the experience and practice of development in advanced
Dr.
industrialization.
Supriya, you are not audible. It appears that you are logged at two places and both devices are nearby. Kindly check it out.
So I don't know what to do actually.
Echo at the listener level.
Should I log off?
That would be better. You can log out and log in once again. Because otherwise purpose will not be served. People will not able to listen. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Ma'am, you can log off and log in again. Dr.
Yeah.
Sapna will give you the access again.
Yeah.
Sir, in the meanwhile, would you like to... Sorry, ma'am?
Can you hear me now?
But there's an echo, ma'am, still.
Okay, so
Very good announcement. One of them was that state government is using triple IIT, Bangalore. And second thing that she said that they are keen to develop district level or state level indices, which can become based on real time data.
Yes,
And
sir.
that is one area we would like to work at. In fact, we can develop something for Karnataka first, and then we can perhaps make it other states to see the benefit out of that. Because analysis is another part, but if the data itself is not validated properly, it is not system driven, it is then improved upon, or let's say it's a sexed up, then it makes no sense, because you can get the conclusion which is far from true. Like you yourself saying that Delhi was very well prepared but did badly in corona. So it can't be operation successful and patient is dead. And that situation might come very often, because governments, the way they are, they will continue to be wanting, and no government is perfect in today's date, because something will always be missing. So at least the data which is available in public domain, which is supposed to be in public domain, at least let's do the real-time analysis of that. One of them could be Manrega data, or many more data are there. Now housing data will come a lot of, because at least on nutrition and housing front, massive problem is going on. No one should be left behind approach, which is unthinkable, because giving toilet is a 10,000 business, but giving a house is 2.5 lakh business. There are enough vultures in the market to deprive the poor from getting it. So since it's now near universal basic scheme which is running, we will get quality data also. So it would be better in case we pick up couple of district as a sample or couple of blocks as sample, and then use that to validate and then make it universal. Supriya, now you are online. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you're better off. Mute kar dijiye.
Professor Supriya, you can come on. Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, as I was saying about the theory reality relationship, which you wanted me to speak on, Annapurna,
Yes.
I was just talking about Amartya Sen's concept of development as freedom, where he really talks about freedom to achieve one's aspirations, having access to opportunities for education and health, which will equip individuals to do so. Now, one could say that this is just theory or an aspirational concept, but actually, it is based on the experience and practice of development in advanced industrialized nations of the West. And their merit may be differential, but all must have equal opportunity. That's the paradigm. And at a later stage, you could have unequal wealth or unequal achievements. But initially, the starting point is equality of opportunity. This is based on the Western concept and practice of individual freedom. So while development as freedom of Amartya Sen may sound like theory, it is actually drawing on the practical and philosophical premises of many Western societies. So I think good theory is always to some extent based on, one's perception of reality. Now, the other question that you placed was the role of quantitative assessments. And I would really say that the kind of quantitative assessments that the Public Affairs Index does is absolutely indispensable to action research policymaking. And I want to emphasize that oftentimes policy is based on, for example, small surveys. These may be very useful, but actually only when we have a quantitative assessment like this on a fairly macro scale and using a number of indicators do we have the full picture. The other thing is that these kinds of assessments are often needed as reminders to policymakers of what is going wrong. For example, in Karnataka, it is now part of our conventional wisdom that the state has done well on economic growth, but not on human development or equity, which comes out very well from your index. But to actually see Karnataka's very low performance on the scale of human development would, or rather should, provide a strong signal to the government to figure out where they're going wrong. And many of us doing research on Karnataka have been pointing out for a long time the pitfalls of pursuing an exclusively growth-oriented policy paradigm. And in fact, much before we came on the scene, these themes have been reiterated. For example, regional imbalance between the north and the south of the state came out very well in the report on regional imbalance in the Nanjundaya report. This was about 2 decades back, has been reiterated many times, but the lack of attention to northern Karnataka continues. Poverty is concentrated there, HDI is lowest in northern Karnataka, and so on. So I think the important dimension of falling low on the scale, as far as Karnataka is concerned, on the scale of equity, is that from the 1980s onwards, certain policies were pursued. For example, wrapping up of state-owned manufacturing enterprises. Consequent on that, the decline also of the small-scale industry sector, and causing a huge amount of economic dislocation to the workforce, to the urban workforce. And as organized factory employment has shrunk, informal work in manufacturing and in services is the only recourse of the urban poor, which actually pushes this class to the edge of vulnerability. But unfortunately, as far as successive governments are concerned, urban employment has been the blind spot of policy. There is a lot of talk on welfare, on schemes, on this and that, but there is very little attention really to the fact that there is no factory-based jobs and that whatever jobs are available are really in the unorganized sector. For example, the global supply chain in garments exports, there is no regulation. Minimum wage is not available to about 25% of the workforce. So there is employment here, but it is highly unregulated. The state has not confronted these deeply problematic domains of the political economy. So that's as far as your second question is concerned. About the improvement of the index, really, I'm not sure. because I do qualitative work and I'm really impressed by the index, but I'm not in a position to give any methodological suggestions. But I would suggest that one way in which it could further its purpose would be perhaps for small policy groups to emerge around the index, which could engage with the policy implications of some of the findings. Because, so much of the research that we do gathers dust and is not really incorporated into policy. And I think it's really our responsibility at this point of time to see that this kind of work actually has a policy impact through closer engagement between government and the PSC. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Any questions for ma'am from anyone? Okay. Then I go on to our next panelist, Mr. Jairaj, sir. K. Jairaj, retired IAS, sir, Additional Chief Secretary, retired Government of Karnataka, Bengaluru. He has had a very, very distinguished professional career, and in his 36 years or more than that with the Indian Administrative Services, he has held several prestigious and key appointments. It's very difficult to put all of them in these 2 minutes because you can get it anywhere. However, I would like to welcome Mr. K. Jairaj, because one of the important roles that he played was heading the Bangalore City Corporation as its commissioner, not once, but twice. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Annapurna, and it's been a pleasure to participate in this session for the last almost 1.5 hours. First, I'd like to join everybody in extending our best wishes to Sri Ramanathan. Ramanathan, sir, has been a mentor and exemplar to all of us, and he exemplifies the best of public service, what public service should stand for. So here's praying for his long life. What you forgot to add, Annapurna, is that I've been out of the government for some time. And so, in a way, it helps me to look at what happens within the system from the outside, okay?
Sorry.
And so I share Supriya's point of view that, whatever be the index, whatever be the measurement, the real question is the misery of the public, is the level of satisfaction, is the kind of satisfaction of needs they feel any higher than what it was before. That stares in my face because I was also present, if you remember, at last year's
Yes.
PAI. And the questions I posed then are the same questions I pose now, which is that compared to earlier times, it's fantastic that, PAC does the PAI with 43 indicators, with 5 themes, 3 pillars, 14 SDGs. But how is this actually disseminated? And who bites the bullet? Undoubtedly, senior officers like the IIPA and Shalini have a year for this. But overall, are our colleagues sensitized to this issue? Does the political executive take a cue? For instance, Karnataka is ranked 7th. It's a kind of middle order performing state. Does it ring any alarm bells in the government that, despite our potential, despite our capacity, despite our legacy, we remain where we are? And a state like Kerala, which is less endowed than us, consistently tops the ranking. Or taking a cue from this, is there a way in which we can improve our monitoring and evaluation mechanism? So maybe one of the spin-offs from this PAI is for PAC to do a kind of a consultation with at least southern state governments on the monitoring and evaluation mechanism that they have in the system, how this can be toned up and so on. Because from my understanding, maybe I'm wrong today, the monitoring and evaluation mechanism leaves a lot to be desired or left a lot to be desired. Now, to respond to a few questions of Dr. Annapurna, and very, very briefly, because much time has been taken, I think the great merit of this index is that, it's a performance marker, something that did not exist in the past. And it helps us, those who are serious about governance, as Mr. Tripathi said, about understanding what outcomes are and how service delivery can be improved, and also makes us look at the relative performance of states in terms of how they fulfill these goals. That, I think, is a signal contribution which this index has accomplished and continues to do so. But at the level of the public policy practitioner, and echoing what Supriya said, the quantitative measurements that are made in terms of all the indicators, what does that do? That really helps us to measure outcomes. It helps us to measure government action, and by that measurement, hopefully there is a push towards better management, because something that cannot be managed, something that cannot be measured cannot be managed. So when the moment measurement starts, maybe management will also be improved. So it's a signal for planners, for instance, as to what is the efficiency of resource use. Wherever money is being put, what is the return that society is getting? And if so, how can this be improved? For instance, one of the telling observations for me was that Karnataka ranks very low on the sustainability index, sustainability factor. And also on equity, it ranks low compared to the other states. So I would take that as a kind of a signal on what needs to be done. But there are certain larger issues that I want to pose, and I'll stop there, Dr. Annapurna. One is,
Yes, sir.
do measurements actually prompt better action in the public domain? That's a question I have, because it will help if we can identify what are the impediments for implementation, what we call blinding issues, and whether the system has the capacity to correct these blinding issues. For instance, one blinding issue is irrational policies that are in vogue today. Can these irrational policies at the state level be corrected, minimized, or in any way pushed aside if the outcomes have suffered? I don't have a clear answer for that. Maybe those who are in the government may be able to provide some feedback on this. As I said, for me, the strength of this activity of PAI, for which I really must compliment them fulsomely, is to what extent, the government is able to fulfill its primary task of meeting the requirements of the people. And by the elaborate framework that you have devised, the template, indicators, the themes, the pillars, I think you are doing a signal service for all discerning observers of public domain in India. So thank you very much for this exercise. And I'm sure with all the comments that Shalini has made, and with the kind of extension and improvements that are possible, this will be even more relevant in time to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, over to you, Tripathi, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm seeing Mr. A. Pujari with us. Would you like to speak, sir? Mr. A. Pujari. I don't know whether he's the same person whom I am guessing. Huh?
Okay, even I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's Dr. Anup Pujari. He's a life member of IIPA and very distinguished civil servant.
Yeah, sir is my secretary. Sir was my secretary in MSME. If he is still there, I would like him to.
Yes, he keeps reminding us about the programs and the website, the links and all that.
Yeah.
Not sure whether he's listening.
I don't know. Yeah. But he has joined. I think he remained joined.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can see him.
In fact, nothing much from my side. I would like to compliment the presenter. I would like to compliment PAC, and I would like to compliment all those who made observation today. a wonderful discussion took place, and especially Dr. Supriya Raj Chaudhary, she made a lot of point. In fact, whether we like it or don't like, but human development indexes are the only criteria for judging the success or failure of a public policy. If it doesn't impact the common man or poor man, last man in the queue, anything else is a statistical exercise and maybe statistical jugglery, because it doesn't attract the attention. Either you help the rich, vehement making them richer, or make the poor poorer. At least the second one should make the news. And that is what the purpose of all this data analytics is all about. And second thing, I would certainly like to point out once again that this DRPG and Niti Aayog ranking and PAC and the Public Affairs Center ranking, there should be some correlation so that you don't contradict each other. As Dr. Salini was saying, that how come a state like Maharashtra is above in the rank and why it is here. Of course, it depends upon indicator that you choose. It depends upon many, many more things. But we should also put a comparison that in this ranking, they were this. So these ranking are not a part of SDGs. Therefore, we are excluding them, and therefore this is the justification. I'm not saying you change your own parameters, because let there be 1,000 ranking, because governance must improve. It is immaterial whether the scale is faulty as long as you are less than the height that you are claiming. You can't blame the scale that I am 6 feet, but your scale says me only 5.9. You are what you are. Don't blame the scale for your height, because feeling happier and feeling higher is as bad as denying the statistics. So I must compliment the PAC for doing a wonderful job, and we would love to work together in the future also. And the credit must go to the IIP regional branch of Karnataka, especially our respected Mr. Dr. S. Ramanathan sir, who has made it a point that Dr. Sapna Chadda and all of us not only participate, but become wiser after listening to each one of you. Thank you very much, ma'am. And go ahead with the next one.
Thank you, sir. Is Ramanathan sir here? Would you like to say a few words? Because I cannot see.
He has walked out. I think Jeevan sir is there. Jeevan Kumar sir is there.
Dr. Jeevan, would you like to add some few lines?
No, except a couple of observations. I think there are many, shall I say, takeaways from what we have just done. The most important thing are the suggestions that the Director General Saab himself has given us. There is scope to take whatever has been initiated, both by PAC, specifically by what PAC has done, and this collaborative venture that we have just organized, second year in a row. There is scope for taking this forward based upon the inputs that Mr. S.N. Tripathi has just given us. I've also made a note, and I'm sure this will also, when we have our next brainstorming, let us sit down and figure out how exactly we can work with the IIP in New Delhi in taking forward the suggestions that the Director General has just given us. That's point number one. Point number two is a point that Supriya made. Now, there are many findings in the PI 2021 report, which are disconcerting, particularly for Karnataka, but also for, I think, many other states. I wish our regional branches had also joined us in good measure here, because the inputs from the other states, which are either not doing so well or who have slipped in the rankings, would have been useful. In fact, Mr. Ramanathan was particular that the regional branches and local branches join us. We got a reply from quite a few saying that they would, but I'm not able to see them here. I saw Mr. Professor Ramesh Arora's name here. I was very delighted to do that, see that. But then that's something I think we have to work towards. But what Supriya was telling us is the fact that from the findings that have emerged from the report, from the index of 2021, there are things that need to be done. And one point that Supriya made at the end is perhaps small policy groups can emerge to look at the disconcerting findings to see how we can improve. I mean, Karnataka, as I was pointing out earlier, we were earlier number 4, I think, and now we have slipped to number 7. For a state like Karnataka, this is very worrisome. And as Mr. K. Jayaraj also pointed out, who is listening to what is happening, either with the state of Karnataka or elsewhere? Are our bureaucrats sensitive enough, or our political executive sensitive enough to see that we're slipping in certain vital indicators? If we have slipped in terms of sustainability, I think that's important to take note of and to correct. If you're slipping in terms of equity, that's important. Are we taking note of that? Are we taking corrective measures? So to do this, Supriya's point about can we or can Public Affairs Center form small policy groups, and can we see how things can be improved? That's a very important point. And I go back to what Mr. S.N. Tripathi said, again at the end, can we reconcile? Even Shalini Rajneesh, Dr. Shalini also pointed this out. Is there some way of reconciling the various data that is emerging, which seem to be at cross purposes? Are we all on the same page, or are we not? I mean, if Niti Aayog says something and PAC says something else, is there a problem? Is it with the data? Is it with the source? Or is it with the analysis? There are questions that are raised here. And perhaps again, we need to sit together to take this forward. So my suggestion at the end of this is that let this be, an activity that leads to other outcomes, not just, we don't just do it every time your report comes out, but between reports, do we get together? Do we take suggestions, meaningful suggestions that have come forward very seriously? And how do we progress? For that, again, the ball would be back in Dr. Annapurna's court. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeevan, for tying up those little loose ends. From the Public Affairs Center side, one I would like to say is we've started work on the Public Affairs Index 2022 already. And I think this particular webinar has served or is serving as a very good platform to see how we could take the next project, the next report to another level. So as Anjana mentioned earlier, she leads the team, and I think we've got a lot of very good inputs. And as you rightly said, Dr. Jeevan, our association with all the people here, Tripathi sir, y'all, does not, or Supriya ma'am or Jairaj sir, Shalini ma'am, does not end over here. I think it should be a new beginning for better indices. In fact, Mr. V. Srinivas from DAPRG was supposed to be one of the panelists and couldn't be there, but he messaged me. He was there for a very short while. He joined for a short while and he had to go. And we've also been dialoguing with him. But Sir Tripathi, sir, we'll be very happy to collaborate with you all in every field that is possible, that is mutually agreeable between PAC and IIPA, both at the regional level and at the national level. We'll be very happy, sir, to see what best we can do.
One point, if you permit me.
Of course, sir.
The 21 or 20 ranking, whichever the latest ranking of DRPG is there, superimpose your own ranking. To the extent it is common, we can say these are the common ranking, this is the weightage that we have given. And those which are not common are those who are other than that. So A, which is common, B, which is special in yours, C, which is specific in theirs. This ABC analysis, and we can come out with a composite ranking of the two indicators. And then we can talk to DRPG that why don't you improve your own data indicators, or why not we share this to the globally any ranking institution, so that we are almost on the same page. And then it will make a lot of sense. Otherwise, Meri sadi teri sadi safed kaisi hai, and my ranking is better than your ranking. This will create an unnecessary controversy, and none of us, I mean, we will lose the credibility here.
Yeah.
So in any case, no government wants to be ranked. And if you rank them in a questionable manner, then they'll say, मैं तो बोलता था, मैं तो जानता था, ये लोग ऐसे ही करेंगे. You know, they are Karnataka based, they will only try to humiliate Karnataka. And then we know all this politics and all those ranking, because nobody wants to fail. So if it has to become critical that DRPG, Niti Aayog to the extent available, and PFI or any other such similarly ranking indicator that are there, we can certainly say that with a pinch of salt that of course they are doing, they no point, but in the same year with the same state, in the same scale, they should not be getting dissimilar ranks.
Right.
Then credibility will improve further, because if a state has been ranked 18th in GOI ranking and your ranking also, that will make a lot of sense. I don't know how, but it is doable. Because you give the same weightage and same types of indicator we choose, same source we indicate, then result cannot be dissimilar. That's the initial point I would like to say.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Very important. In fact, BitPie, we don't want to just stop at producing a report. About 2 years back, when we brought out a report, we were invited by the government of Himachal Pradesh to actually provide a training to all the government officers on how we collected this data and how they can also use it. How they can collect data and use it to improve their performance. And that was very good and very welcome. This is something also we're looking at the other states where we can, say that, hey, this is what we saw. This is how you can improve. This is what you can do to increase in your performance in the various pillars and other indicators. So I think we come to an end, and I would like to thank each one of you all. I'm not going to go with the list of names because many of you all are there, but thank you to everyone, Ramnathan sir, Jeevan sir, Tripathi sir, Dr. Sapna, to all our wonderful panelists, Dr. Shalini, Dr. Professor Chowdhury, and Mr. Jairaj for giving such a wonderful evening. I honestly didn't know how 1.5 hours ran away. I was sitting in the computer at 2:30 and I see now it is 4:50. And it's been a wonderful, enriching session for me personally. I'm always selfish. And thank you again, Dr. Sapna, for coordinating this event from Delhi, and Dr. Jeevan from the Karnataka side. Thank you, Tripathi sir, so much, so much. Thank you,
Sapna
everyone.
will have the last word from our side. Dr. Sapna will have the last word. Go ahead now.
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. I just want to convey my regards and thanks to all of you. Thanks to IIP Karnataka branch who introduced us to public affairs centers, and we had a very good evening. We learned a lot about the rankings and how it was done. It was a very wonderful exercise which PAC has done. I'm also thankful to all the panelists. They were really brought out very well a number of points which will definitely help not only PAC but also IIP, because as Sir has said, we are also working in the same way for the district level. So with this, I thank both IIP Karnataka branch, Ramnathan sir, Professor Jeevan Kumar, PAC Center, especially Dr. Annapurna. This was my first interaction with the organization, but we hope this union will continue. And also thank all the panelists.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you, Anjana. Sorry, I forgot to thank you.